Whakatakateho ki te uru, whakatakateho ki te tonga, kia mākina kina kiuta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hi ake ana e a tākura, he tio, he huka, he hohu, tihei, Māori ora. Kia ora, everybody. Wow, lovely to see you all again. Feels like it's been ages since our face-to-face. But I think that's because the following few days felt like a week trying to recover. But here we are. Nice to see a few newish faces as well. Be good to check in with you guys at some point today. And I always say that and then always forget. So remind me, please. So we've got a busy agenda for this evening. We're here to finalise a few things from our climate action book that we didn't quite reach consensus on last time. We're then going to have a look at the weaving plan and seek your approval on that. We'll explain the journey of how we've got to this point, and hopefully you'll think it's as brilliant as I do. And it's not 24 pages to read this time, so yay. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what the forum might look like going forwards now that we've got those documents, the foundational documents in place. And we'll have a breakout room discussion on an idea that we've got to propose to you. But we won't be making any decisions today, I wouldn't think, on that. And then we'll look at the proposed operating procedures that have been developed by some of us in the coordination group, and that's pretty much a little bit about a submission to the Climate Change Commission, and then closing off. So it's quite a lot to get done in an hour, but it's quite an exciting evening for me to be kicking off the next chapter in the forum's journey. So thank you for being here. It's lovely. And particularly thanks to those who blew off Forest and Bird. That's a big deal. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Joanna Santa-Barbara, who will walk us through the changes that have been made to the Climate Action Book since we last talked about them at the face-to-face last month. Jo, would you like me to share the two main pages?
Just one quick thing before we get to that. Can we just
yes, thanks, Jessie.
We're recording this hui because it's quite an important one, and there are many people who can't be here because of the Forest and Bird meeting conflict and various other reasons. So just to be aware that it is being recorded and will be put on the forum's YouTube channel. So if you want to have your camera off and you don't want to be shown, that's absolutely fine. I'm recording the speaker view rather than gallery view, so it's the person who's speaking will be front of screen. But does anyone have any real concerns with that? Just raise your hand or say now. And if you do afterwards, feel free to get in touch with me in the next day or so and we can work something out. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Jessie. Okay, so if I share that screen, Joan, now, or would you like to talk about it first?
Let me say a few words about it first, Julie, and then share it. That would be good. Okay, so at the last hui, there were 2 pages, pages 18 and 19, that did not pass consensus. The Ecosystems and Biodiversity group wanted to strengthen the emphasis on the importance of biodiversity for its own sake, as well as its importance in sequestering carbon. So as you'll see in a moment, I think, the old title for this section of the Carbon Action Book was How We Draw Down and Store Carbon from the Atmosphere. And of course, largely that was nature-based solution of increasing biodiversity, particularly in natural forests and ecosystems. This was changed to the title that you see there now, How We Support Nature and Store Carbon, and the text was changed accordingly. But let me say just a quick word about the process. The CAP group, Climate Action Plan group of David Eyre and Olivia Hyatt and Louise Blakely worked with Debs Martin as the representative of the biodiversity group, and we want to extend our gratitude to Debs representing that group. It was a very considerate consultation, a very considerate interaction between biodiversity represented by Debs and us, considerate about content and about the time. We felt very great time pressure to get this done so it could be presented to this hui. So thanks to Debs and the biodiversity group, and also thanks to the two people who dissented from the biodiversity group's blockage and wanted sequestration emphasized. That too was a generous and considerate interaction between the CAP group and those two folk who differed. So really happy with the process that unfolded there. So I think what there is to say about the text is that it was brought into line with the different emphasis of the title, that there is now a good deal more material about supporting nature and the impact of climate change on the natural world around us, as well as the important fact that biodiversity and restoration of nature helps us very much to deal with climate change mitigation and adaptation. So really, I think those are the main points, Julie, and unless you or anyone else wants elaboration on those points. Oh, can't hear you.
You're on mute, Julie.
Sorry. I wonder if you could just elaborate on whether the actions in those 2 pages changed very much.
There are more actions in there on supporting nature and restoring nature. I think that's the main change. In several of the sections, at the moment, I can't pinpoint which sections, but just there are more actions included.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions of clarification about either the process or the outcome? I'm going to assume that everybody has read those 2 pages as they were sent out with the agenda. But if you have any questions of clarification about the process or the content, now's a good time. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. If you don't want to use your video, but you would like to show your hand, there's a little button down the bottom of your screen. It's often, oh goodness, I can't actually see it. Oh, I'll come back to you on how you do it, but it's there somewhere. That's terrible. Yes, otherwise you can just put your video on quickly to show me that you're wanting to participate, and I'll take a note of you and then you can turn yourself off again. Okay, so without any questions of clarification, does anyone have any other comments or concerns they'd like to raise? Okay, I'm not seeing any.
Oh,
so,
sorry.
Yeah, Des.
Sorry. Just one point from someone who didn't make it to the hui, and I've been trying to get a look at the, try and find the climate action book on, some of the previous emails, and even the one that was sent out today, and I really struggled to find a copy or to see, and I just wonder whether a version was sent out to those people that didn't get to make the hui in person, other than obviously being able to see it through the recordings, but it's just something I've struggled to find anywhere.
Yeah, sorry about that, Jess. We will certainly make sure that it is published after this one.
Okay.
These are the last few changes, and then one of our main jobs will be to publish it as widely as possible.
Yeah.
So we'll see what that looks like. But yeah, we'll make sure that comes in the next email. Thank you.
Cool.
Okay, so on those 2 pages that we've just been exploring, nobody's raised any concern about it. Is there anybody who would not consent to this being approved today? No, that's looking great. Okay, we'll call those 2 pages approved then. Awesome. There's one more item on the climate action book before we will sign off the whole shebang though, and I'll hand over to Jo again for that one.
Okay. Jack, you're just premature there. While we were copy editing the climate action book over recent weeks, dealing with punctuation, spelling, spacing, formatting, etc., inevitably we spotted various ways of improving its content. And you yourselves in the hui gave us lots of good suggestions at the last hui. But because all of the pages, except pages 18 and 19, had gone through the consensus process, all of those good ideas will have to wait for the next iteration. But there was one that we thought couldn't wait. And this was pointed out by a signatory of the Climate Forum who isn't comfortable speaking to the forum about it. But once it was pointed out to us, we in the Climate Action Plan Group, we were convinced that it had to be changed in this 2021 Climate Action book. And we're therefore asking your permission to change it. The wording is the problem, not the intended meaning. The intended meaning stays the same. The wording has some tweaks that we hope you'll approve. So on page 23, and in fact, I'll get you to show the image of this, please. So you're about to see page 23. And your screen of faces may obscure this, but on the right-hand side of the image, or on the left-hand side of the image, you'll see that the heading in the pink box is the major threats of climate change are. Okay, so just note the use of the presence of the word threats. And in the 8th bullet point, which is the one at the top of the second column, it says increasing population from climate changed migration and refugees. It was pointed out that this could be read, especially by anyone who has experienced anti-immigrant discrimination, as meaning that climate refugees were a threat. So that is very far from our intended meaning. What we intended was to point out the importance of considering and planning for the issue of climate change migration so that we're prepared to welcome climate migrants. So to deal with that, we wish to change the wording as follows, and as outlined in yellow on the pink box on the right, where the heading changes to the major consequences of climate change are, and the wording of the bullet point changes to increasing pressure on resources from climate change migration. So we are asking your consent, take the image off, to make those changes, yeah, if you wish to question or consider it, please do. But these are changes that the Climate Action Plan group would like to make to that wording.
Thanks, Jo. That was very clear. Does anybody have any questions of clarification about the change that is being proposed here? Oh, I thought that was very clear too. Okay, what I'm going to ask you to do, as some people already are, is give a thumbs up if you support this proposal. That's down in the reactions button at the bottom of your screen for most people, and a clapping if you disagree. So a thumbs up if you support that change. Just keep pressing them if they fade on their own. And I'm going to be searching for both those and a clapping for disagreeing. Awesome. Okay, I'm only seeing thumbs up. So I'm going to go ahead and say we have ratified that decision. And as a result, all of our climate action book.
Oh, fantastic. That's fabulous. Oh, hooray.
Yes.
That's exciting.
Celebration reaction. I'm going to do one too.
Wonderful.
Thank you, everybody. That is really, really cool. I don't have the words for it, but very, very cool. Okay, and we're beautifully on time for our agenda as well. So let's go on to the next part of the agenda before we get ahead of ourselves. So this weaving plan that we have been talking about over and over for a very long time now. Some people have been more involved in these discussions than others. So I'll just give you a brief summary of the journey that this little document has been on. It started out in June last year, or July last year at a face-to-face, when we started talking about what might it mean to build relationships and to outreach and to create a community here in the forum that is representative of the wider community, and how do we heal divides? All those kinds of questions started in July last year. We then in December had another face-to-face where we started talking about explicitly about the purpose of weaving our communities together and what might that look like, and what might the success criteria for those look like, you know, the outcomes that we are looking at, how we'll be able to measure. And Jessie did a wonderful job of bringing together those two conversations into the first iteration of this document, which went to the coordination group and went to, if I'm remembering correctly, a whole forum hui for discussion and feedback. After that, I had a little moment, as I do sometimes. Oh no, my screen is not letting me press the button. I have to do it like that. It's a bit annoying. There we go. That a lot of what we were trying to achieve effectively falls under community-led development. And this insight came as we developed the Climate Action Plan over the last few months in particular. And we were thinking about what is the difference between the Climate Action Plan that we've just, approved, and this internally focused weaving plan about what is the role of the forum. And if the role of the forum is to weave our communities together so they can undertake this climate action plan that we've just approved, then we are effectively encouraging community-led development. And these 5 principles are taken from that sector of community-led development. They've come from Inspiring Communities. have spent decades working out what do you need to do to effectively do community-led development. So I went back to Jessie and said, hey Jessie, how would you feel about throwing all of what you've done up in the air and rejigging it based on these? And it didn't quite work out that way. But what we did come up with, or really what Jessie came up with, and we refined a little bit, are these 4 action categories that we think together encompass or bring together those 5 principles and what we think the forum needs to do, as had previously been brainstormed in those 2 face-to-face hui that I talked about before. So we're talking in here about types of action that connect dots, that build community and alignment. And the second category of grassroots action that's about doing pieces of the climate action plan, particularly perhaps those pieces that aren't already being worked on in the region. Another type of action that's about education of ourselves and of the wider community. And the 4th category of advocacy, and that's about engaging with and supporting all kinds of decision makers in the region. And having created those, we thought about what the scope of each of those might look like. And we came up with the top 3 of each of these boxes. And when we took those to all of the wonderful subgroup coordinators in the forum, they gave us a couple of extra that they felt were missing. And we're very happy to put that in. And when we took it to the coordination group, we added weaving collaboratively with iwi throughout this kaupapa across all 4 of those types of actions. So this plan has gone to the people who are effectively leading the forum. And the plan would include all of these audiences, and in a structural way, it would include all of the topics from the climate action plan, as you will see shortly. So these topics have been taken straight out of there. So between the climate action plan and the community-led development principles and those 4 action categories that have all been scoped out, all kinds of get piled in together into this table. And this is what would be what would evolve as we create, as we take action. Excuse my little editing up the top there for the new title. So this table would be created every year, probably, to begin with. Each of the topics that are at the top of each column here could potentially be a new group of the forum. So we could evolve our groups to fit these topics. And under each of those topics, we would attempt to decide upon a milestone that we think we could achieve during that year, what actions we would take to get there, and the resources that we have and need, so that we can, in a coordinated way, go out and find what we still need to get this action, to get those actions underway. So what I'm asking for today from you is your consent for us to go ahead this year with this structure for our weaving plan. All of the pieces that we've just talked about that fall into the document that Jessie emailed out to you. So that's what we're after. We're not looking for consent for any of the content of that table. That will be developed over the coming months by the groups. But the idea of it, as it has been outlined, and the rationale behind it, as I've just described to you, that's what I'm looking for. But before I ask you for that consent, Does anybody have any questions of clarification about the content of that document or what I've just described to you? Is that Jack?
Hi, Julie. Yep. I think it's a great outline of what needs to be done, and I assume that it's not going to be limited in any way, and that I'm assuming that there can be several milestones, for example, or several actions under any of those categories, just for clarification. Yeah, you're shaking your head.
I think it could be used quite flexibly. I also think that they could be combined in certain cases. If that's, you know, rather than repeating the same action 20 times over in 20 different boxes, you know, we could combine them into one. So I think it can be used quite flexibly. We'll just have to explore what that looks like over the coming months.
Yeah, and obviously there's relationships between the columns. Yeah.
Yeah.
The only other question I have, it seems a little bit off to me to call it a plan. It's more like a format or an approach or an outline for a plan. And once we have filled in that outline, that's the plan.
Agreed.
And just
Thanks,
in terms
Jack. Give us a good word and we'll make that change.
of communicating it externally, I think that might be helpful.
Thank you.
I think it's a great job. Thank you.
Julie, you had a question?
Yeah, just a question of clarification, I guess. The work that we did last year with all those documents, which have fed into the action book, how does our structure and our work from the last year relate to what this is going forward?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. A number of different things were pulled out of the chapters that were written last time. Of course, some of it went into the climate action book, the action that we want to happen in the wider community, some of which we will do. Other pieces were about local councils and what we hoped they would do, and that was pulled out and put into a separate document again, and there's parallel discussions happening in that space. And there's other stuff that's about the internal working of the forum, or things that the groups really wanted to begin work on themselves. And those things can absolutely fit straight into this. So everything that you had planned to do can go in there somewhere. I don't want to lose anything. And it may be that some groups like yours, I suspect, Julie, won't need to make any changes. They won't need to add anything because you've already got so much going on. But I don't think that's going to be true of most groups. So you guys are going to have an easier ride of it.
Yes, in some ways it just looks blank, but it's not blank. It is actually, yes, connected to that. But
yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
we're not starting again.
No. Thank you very much for that. I don't want to lose any of the momentum or the energy or the action that's already going. It's just about putting it all into one place so we can see what's missing and then filling in what's missing. Thanks. Any other questions of clarification?
I've got my hand up, Julie. I just have done it with using the hand. I've worked out you click on participants and that gives you the opportunity to raise your hand.
Oh, thanks.
My question is in terms of those arrangements of the teams under the new titles, what would that mean for the existing groups? Like what does A look like? What does B look like? Similar to what Jack put up before around the changing of the text, you know, what is now and what would it become? Oh, well, we know what it would become, but what happens to the various groups?
That's actually the next item on the agenda. Do you think you could pause with that question, or does it need answering now before you're happy to support the document?
Well, I think it's a detail to understand, if you know what I'm getting at.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah.
Jessie, did you pull together a graphic that shows that?
No. Was it on my to-do list?
That's all right. I can't remember whose to-do list it was on. That's fine. So I'll bring up those topics again. Bear with me a moment, and I'll see if I can walk us through what it would look like. But this is all up for negotiation. So there we go. So I imagine, but could be wrong, that what we grow and eat would incorporate a lot of the food group, the land use group probably, and potentially some other bits and pieces from other places, but those two groups mostly. What we make, buy and waste would probably bring together the local economy and business group with the waste group. How we get energy will probably just be a direct translation of the energy group. Where we live and work, I imagine, will be the urban development group, and potentially some other bits and pieces about work from business. How we move ourselves and our stuff around is probably a direct translation of transport, but again, bits of business as well. How we support nature and store carbon, I imagine that that would be the ecosystems and biodiversity group, and potentially pieces of land use or forestry might end up evolving into that space. But as far as I know, there isn't a lot of active forestry thinking or input participation in the forum at the moment. How we stay healthy and connected, I imagine would take up most of the well-being of the people cluster, so social justice, society and culture, resilient communities, peace, conflict and reconciliation, those bits and pieces. However, I have another thought on some of that, which was focused on the working of the forum, about regenerative culture, about how we heal divides, about how we look after each other and connect as a community. That could end up being a new functioning of the forum group. And all of the functioning of the forum groups that we have, the admin and finance, the science, tech and research, the strategic communications, all of those groups are separate to this structure. They would run in parallel and they would support the work of these groups. Does that answer your question enough for now, Debs? You're on mute.
Too busy watching your screen sharing to find my mute button. No, that's a really good explanation, and that's quite helpful just to see how those things fit and the thinking that's gone in behind that. Kia ora.
Thanks. Sorry if I missed anybody. And we will, as I say, have more of a conversation about what that would actually look like, and if we need more functioning of the forum groups to make sure that we don't miss any of the stuff that's going on by having dropped something somewhere by mistake. But that's the next piece on the agenda. So more on that, just hold off, please, for now. But if there's more on the weaving plan as a whole, the idea of that table, regardless of the structure of the forum, although I think it would be nice if it fitted, it's not necessary for it to fit. So that table that I showed you with the milestones, the actions and the resources, and all the thinking that went into creating that table. Does anyone have any concerns about supporting that to go through for this year? And we'll review it at the end of at this time next year.
Debs, is your hand raised again, or is that just from before?
Just from before, I haven't pulled it down yet. Aroha mai.
Thanks. JP, over to you.
It probably will come up in the next bit, but I guess I do have still some concerns about the groups, and I don't think it will be adequate.
I'm struggling to hear you a bit, JP. Can you wriggle your microphone?
Sorry.
Thanks. That's much better.
Yeah, just in terms of the groups, which I guess does feed into the weaving plan here. I'm still, we had a discussion about this. I'm still not sure how our group would fit into it. But I mean, we could probably discuss this a little bit more in the next bit. But I guess because it's connected to the weaving plan, it's just worth raising now, I suppose.
Sure. So how would you like us to proceed? Would you be happy for us to approve this now and then go on to that discussion? Or would you prefer that we have that next discussion and then come back to this decision, or something else?
I think the latter, that it could be that the two things are too connected to
Okay.
approve and then rediscuss.
All right. So if we can all press pause on our thinking about this document then, and we can move on to the next item in the agenda and then just briefly come back to finish off that decision afterwards. Awesome. So there'd be two types of groups, the groups by topic and the groups to support the functioning of the forum. So what I would like for us to do is to pop into breakout rooms to consider the way that I described how the existing groups continue in the new structure, anything I missed, anything that that could potentially change. How do you think the work of our existing groups should continue if we adopt the weaving plan? And that includes the groups by the topic and other groups to support the functioning of the forum. So we'll just have a quick chat in breakout rooms. We'll come back in 20 minutes at 8:30.
Do we want to make it slightly shorter since we're going back to the weaving decision? Maybe.
Yeah,
15?
all right, sounds good. 8:25. So 15 minutes to nut out those two things. What should the topic-based groups look like? And what should the functioning of the forum, which support all of those topic-based groups, look like? Does everyone understand that distinction?
I have, so Debs, sorry, I ask a lot of questions, but JP raised a question about the group that he's involved in. What is that group? You may know the answer to that, Julie, but what is that group?
Society and culture is the...
Okay.
Can you describe briefly what your group likes to work on?
Well, we've been, I mean, a lot of our discussions are really around, you know, I suppose it does fit into the function of the forum in some ways, but the part of the problem is that society and culture covers all those groups. And it's, I mean, it is really neat to sort of pigeonhole things, and for some things it works. You know, transport is one thing, and there's the nitty-gritty of transport. You know, what is a vehicle? You know, what kind of vehicle are we going to travel around in? But the actual cultural shift and how you get there is quite a different thing. Same with growing your own vegetable, what we eat, you know, what we build, what does our community look like? What does our city look like? A lot of these are all cultural things. You can't put that stuff over here. So, I mean, a lot of, I guess our discussions have really been around, you know, how we can create ideas and philosophies that can feed in, that can be picked out by other groups or the wider community. And so a lot of it is just brainstorming and trying to, you know, think outside the square.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Yeah,
and I suspect the same issue of being connected to all the other topics is going to be true, especially of social justice as well, resilient communities as well, and a lot of the other well-being of the people groups, because for exactly the reasons you described, because they fit across everything. And it's also important to know that most of the groups are also interconnected. So it can't be said that by calling this a group and this a different group that they are separate. And so there's going to need to be a lot of work as we develop the table going forward about how we figure out what those interconnections look like. And this, in terms of the structure of the forum, that's another question. How do we deal with those interconnections? So is that enough for you, Debs, to be going on with? Awesome. Okay, so I will just pop us into...
Ask a quick question. Also, can you just
yes, please.
Can you just go through quickly again what the coordination groups would be, or the functioning of the forum groups?
That's up to you. That's one of the questions.
Okay, so they don't
What
exist
groups
yet.
do we need to support this mahi? What we have at the moment is one about admin and finance,
Yeah.
one about communications,
Mm-hmm.
one about science, tech and research, and one about something else that I've forgotten. Darn it. There's always one. Can't remember. Maybe there's only 3.
Julie, could you just put your questions in the chat so that we all know what we're
yes.
or just so that we're focused on what you're asking.
I will send them through as an announcement. They're basically, what topic-based groups do we want?
Yep.
And what groups do we need to support those groups?
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
The other functioning of the forum group we have at the moment is the climate action plan group, but that's sort of going to be morphing now that that book is ratified. Okay.
Okay. Right, breakout rooms. Oh golly, I've lost those now as well. Talk amongst yourselves.
Do you want me to do it, Julie, or I can just put everyone randomly in?
Yes, please. I don't know why I can't see it.
How many rooms would you like?
6, please.
Done. Here we go.
See you in 10 minutes, everyone.
I'm just sending the questions out now.
Oh, beautiful. That's all I was going to do. Seems to be going all right, eh?
Yeah, definitely.
Yay, people. Okay, so we're going to have a quick report back to hear what you are thinking at the moment as we begin to think about this question. Jessie's going to call on people.
First up, can we have someone from room 1, which was the room that Christine was in? Don't jump.
I got nominated.
Oh, great. Thanks, Julie. Go for it.
So we'd all been part of different groups. What did we talk about? What had been achieved and the different ways they worked. A lot of it was about the connections between the groups. and that having fewer groups might help in building some of those connections. And we also talked a bit about the frequency and how the groups would meet as well. So from formal monthly meetings to more frequent, less formal meetings that we'd had the range of experience. And so the less formal and more frequent can have a lot of value. And I am thinking of society and culture there, but also some of the other groups have done that too, and particular projects to keep the momentum. So overall, I think, yeah, the idea of the groups is good. Yeah, and it's really about making sure all those connections from society, the science group connecting with all the groups, the people, the community groups connecting with all of them. That's very rough. Anybody else in the group want to add to that very rough summary?
That's great. Thank you, Julie. We'll move on to room 2. So someone from the room that Anne was in. Anyone?
Shall I just say, we had
Thank
3 points. We liked all the new groups for the outcomes. For the functioning of the forum groups, they need to sort of form as they need to, as long as somebody knows who they are. And that we also need to look at becoming a legal entity to support having more paid staff.
Thank you very much. Who's in group 3, Jessie?
Excellent. So, okay, so Adrian was in this room, David also in this room. Who wants to report?
Go on, I'll say a couple of things.
Thanks, JP.
So, well, one of the things was, you know, that it's good to have the groups, and that again, it just we just going back to the communication, how we have these overlaps and how we share stuff more effectively is still an issue. And having been involved in that, let's share some of the responsibility there. In terms of, you know, perhaps society and culture could be, you know, in the as the working of the forum, but one of the things we were concerned about is the naming of that. Then, you know, it is more than the working of the forum, and maybe we need a different title there. The suggestion was that we, you know, what would it be for us to be part of the cluster, you know, that's a similar cluster. But one of the problems is that our group has worked very openly and freely, and it just doesn't fit. It fits the kind of people that, you know, want to work like that. You know, so it is quite different. Karen, do you want to, or anybody else, do you want to add anything to that that I might have missed? I'm only talking from my own perspective, sorry.
No, I think you've summed it up quite well, JP. But I think we thought we think that we discussed the importance of being able to have groupings outside the box, so that we're not sort of like buttonholing everybody into groups that don't necessarily fit. So there needs to be a bit of a way of actually allowing some innovation and some outside off the wall thinking. I'm not saying that JP's group is off the wall, but sorry, I didn't mean that. But yeah, just if someone's got a really good idea that doesn't fit, then we don't want to stifle that, basically.
Absolutely. I imagine that there'll be lots of little working groups that go alongside these more permanent groups. There might be something that comes up that actually needs connection between 3 or 4 of the groups, and they just come together for that project or something, and then off they go again. So those kinds of things can definitely happen. JP, Jessie reminded me while you guys were in the breakout group that we added a 4th part to the connecting dots action category, which is supporting our communities on the journey of societal and cultural change required to respond to climate change. And that was in response to your comments in our meeting last week. So that's one place it can go in the table, but that doesn't really answer the questions of grouping. So I guess, do you think that there is scope enough within either the functioning of the forum idea to rebrand and carry on in there, or within that staying healthy and well, or something like that?
I think we'd fit better in the functioning of the forum.
I do too.
Especially if we could think about how that might be a little bit wider in terms of the naming of that, so that it's better for people outside of the forum to understand what, you know, that it isn't just about sending emails and organizing meetings and that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it was good to have that fourth thing in there. I think Jessie worded that really nicely. So, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks. Okay, which group are we on, Jessie? Is it 4?
Yes, group 4. So Barb, this was the room Barb was in.
Jack and I'll report on this. We began by asking what people wanted of the Science, Technology and Research Group. And one helpful answer to that was that the group should keep us abreast of global and national scientific advances in understanding climate change and its impacts and things that can be done to mitigate and adapt. So that can be taken to that functioning of the forum group. But then we spent most of our time talking about how to integrate understanding and work between the several groups, with examples of both energy and land use being relevant to multiple groups. And the suggestion was made by Jack that there must be management models that could help us work out this, help us integrate well. Our website is partly for this purpose, and we need to think about its use to accomplish this. The table, of course, I think is also designed by Jessie and Julie to try to give an overview of what everybody's doing. People moving between groups was raised, and I think that has worked very well in the past, but it was pointed out that it's also very time consuming for people who are actually trying to do it. And at each hui, perhaps, or at many huis, having group interaction times, and pointed out that that has worked well in the past in understanding what other groups are doing and how that fits with what our group is doing. So yeah, those were the 2 topics we undertook.
Thanks, Jo.
And we're now on to group number 5. So this is a group Debs was in.
Yep. So we kind of leapt into the conversation around the topics, and there was a really strong, I'd say quite a strong support for that. With those kind of hesitations, you know, put some things around it, around the notion of sometimes bringing groups together can mean that there's so much going on that we actually, even within those big groups, will pull back into smaller groups anyway. So the ability to kind of organise in terms of that self-organising kind of model was something that came up. It was raised about something completely different that, you know, elsewhere the organisation has been more project-based, so we have specific project work and linking them with the community and organising around that, and that may be something just to flag for discussion for the future. So yeah, I think generally we thought some of the groupings were good, and basically what others have said, the opportunity to make sure that we don't become siloed in those groups, that we don't see them as operating on their own, that there's always connections, and so making sure that there's openness and transparency for people to be able to connect and reach out. In terms of the I'm just going to drop into a chat stuff here that I had. So in terms of, I think things like the society and culture, the science and tech, this came out of some discussions, spread across the forum is really good, and it's as important in terms of administrative support working across as it is to have that informative support that groups like the science and tech and the culture and society actually provide for us. And there was one other thing, and just my chat's going all crazy all over the place. And the notion of functioning of the forum being a group itself as well. Komotu te kōrero. I don't know if anybody else has got anything else to add from my group, but yeah, great kōrero.
Good, I think oh, yeah, Hal, go for it.
Sorry, camera was off. I just add to that, Debs, just to clarify, it sort of came to the wondering, could the functioning of the forum, could that be just a single group in itself without any of these subcategories, in order to, you know, likewise with the others, organically self-organise as per needs?
Interesting, thanks.
Oh, okay. Room 6. Hannah was in this group. Rachel, Peter, Sharon.
Well, I'll try and summarise what we did. We needed to kind of clarify the reasons for creating the new structure, and how the existing groups would make the choice whether which of the new topic areas to join. So we didn't really clarify how that would happen, but the simplification of the structure seemed to be an important thing, especially in terms of new members coming into the forum. It will be easier for them to find a place. So, and in terms of groups working across the whole forum, we thought that society and culture would fit in well with the functioning of the forum cluster, and similarly with the strategic communications group is developing a set of communications guidelines for communications projects. Yeah. Anybody else?
Thanks, Peter. Okay, is that all the groups now? Yeah, awesome. Okay, so what I've heard there makes me think that we should skip back and have a decision made on the weaving plan now that we've explored that issue a little bit more before we do anything else. So let's practice using our thumbs up if you support us adopting the weaving plan to be renamed weaving something else, as per Jack's suggestion. And a clapping if you do not. Can everybody do a thumbs up or a clapping now, please? And I'll just have a look around. Oh, well done, you guys. You're tech savvy people. And if you haven't managed to figure out the thumbs up and clappings, then feel free to just unmute and shout out. Thank you. I saw all thumbs up. So I'm going to say that is a decision made on the weaving something. Thank you, everybody. And Jack, if you get a bright idea about what you think that word should be, then send it to us, because I agree. And same to anyone else, actually. Okay, thank you. That's brilliant. Another chapter closed for now. So I'm just wondering, yes, Debs, thank you. Kete is lovely. I'm wondering if there is anybody who would object to us making a decision now about the groups, just the topic-based groups, not the functioning of the forum groups. Is there anyone who would object to us having a quick consensus check about that now? If you would object, do a quick clap now. Okay, well, let's do that then. So if you could think for a moment about those 7 topic-based groups and do a thumbs up if you support those ideas and a clapping if you don't. Do that now, please.
Sorry, Julie, I didn't quite understand that question.
Thank you for asking me for clarification.
Yeah.
So we were talking about the 7 topic-based groups from the weaving plan and from the action books, about each of those having a forum group of its own.
Yeah. So we yeah, do we agree or not?
Do we agree with that idea or not? Yes. Okay, can we do that one more time, please, everybody? A thumb up if we agree and a clap if we don't. Thank you. I wasn't intending to make that decision today, but it did seem like there was consensus that it was a good idea pending how it's all going to actually work. And we'll nut out the how it's all going to actually work at next month's meeting. But now we have that as a basis to start from. So thank you for that. All right, let's crack on because we haven't got a huge amount of time left. The operating procedures is the last big item for the last 15 minutes of our meeting. I'm going to assume everybody's read them, but I just wanted to give you a quick rundown on how they came to be. The operating procedures were created by the working group, or were drafted by the working group that set up the launch of the forum way back 18 months ago. We had conversations with both councils at that time, and both councils were in support of those. But of course, over the last years, things have changed. So Jessie and Peter got together and figured out how they had changed. And then the coordination group had a look at that revised set of operating procedures and made some further revisions. So the coordination group, did I say that before? The coordination group had a look at them and made some extra revisions. So that's how this document came in front of you. And I am aware that we don't have a huge amount of time for a consensus decision if we're really going to explore concerns that people have. So I wonder if we can figure out how much concern there is in the room. If you've read this and you have a concern about it, could you use your clapping symbol now just to give me an idea of how much content there is to discuss? Could you do that now, please, if you have any concerns about them? Or questions of clarification, for that matter. Huh. Okay. So either that means nobody's read them or nobody has any concerns. Well,
Is there a link? Is there a link missing in the document? Sorry.
It is
the last page of the agenda for operating procedures.
I I checked the links, Jesse, and the link was going to the old version. I sent you a message about it, but you know, I think that maybe there wasn't time to fix it.
It's all one version, so I hadn't changed the title to say March 2021, but it's the same one. So the changes that were made 2 days ago are all on that version that's linked at the bottom of the agenda. So it's all there. The 2 changes that were made that were suggested by yourself, Anne, were to change the name of the coordination group to leadership group, just to more accurately reflect what that group does based on the actions that are listed in the procedures. And also to add one additional action for the leadership group, being to communicate key decisions and developments to members of the forum. I'll just drop the link to the procedures in the chat as well, just in case anyone is having trouble seeing them.
Okay. So this is the up-to-date version. The title wasn't changed at that time. Yeah?
Yeah. Correct.
Cool, thank you. Okay, so I see Sharon with a hand up and Karen with a clap, and Chris with a hand up. So we'll go in that order. Sharon, then Karen, then Chris. Sharon, over to you.
Well, you might want to go to the other 2 first, actually, because mine is slightly kind of off topic in a way.
Okay, thank you. Karen.
Just looking at the conflicts of interest section, I think there's conflicts of interest are wider than just at the forum meetings. So I think maybe we need to consider conflicts within the work we do as groups. An example is that I've got a conflict of interest in terms of the work that our group does, because that's zero waste is something I make money out of. I mean, I'm not going to make money out of the forum, but it's still a conflict of interest. So I just think that we need to consider. I think each group should record conflicts of interest within a group, or allow for that. So just something there needs to be widened, I think. Just to make us squeaky clean, in terms of it's perception more than anything. I don't think any of us are trying to make anything out of this, but it's more to ensure that we aren't perceived as being feathering our own nests or anything.
Thank you. Peter, what do you think of that suggestion? Can you see that on the screen?
Can we make it even simpler and just add conflicts of interest will be declared at the start of forum meetings, including all group meetings? Or, I mean,
yeah, I was thinking just make them all forum meetings, Jesse.
Yeah.
All meetings of the forum or any subgroup.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay.
Chris, over to you.
Yeah, just with number 11 on the functions of the forum. It talks about the action plan and the weaving plan as though those are the only plans that the forum's going to develop. When in fact we've got communications plans, we've got subgroup plans, action plans, and so on. So I just, maybe it's a bit ambiguous, but just make sure the wording is sort of open, that those aren't the only 2 plans that the forum's going to produce, or it may want to do other plans as well.
Yes, thank you. Does that work for you, Chris?
Yep, that's fine. Yeah.
Peter?
Good.
Awesome. Thanks, Jessie. Sharon, over to you.
Yeah, my my sort of comment really is I've read the you know, these and have no problems with them. It's not really my area of expertise. I guess I'm just kind of concerned that time is going by, you know, in this meeting, and you know, I think we've, to quote Peter Olorenshaw in the discussion on Ning, you know, in terms of the climate change recommendations in our submission, we should be all over this. You know, it's really, really important that our group gets submission in my opinion. We have a lot of technical and scientific expertise, and that's what they're the kind of submissions that are going to count. And I think that while a lot of this, you know, these plans and forums are kind of useful, there's no real deadline for them, whereas there is the 28th of March for the, you know, for the submission. So that's really, you know, just my concern.
Thanks, Sharon. That leads us very nicely into the next item and final item on the agenda. But beforehand, Becky is keen to chime in.
Hi, yeah, sorry team. I'm going to start this with saying I recognise that I have not done a detailed read through of the of this document, and so if I'm repeating something, I apologise. But it's just to follow up on something that Karen said with the conflicts of interest. Well, it's just to also recognise our conflict of interest in the fact that we may not be fully representative of all people of colour, ethnic minorities, and everything as well. So in socioeconomic standing. So just to bear that in mind in our conflicts of interest, that, you know, I don't know how we'd put that in, to be honest, but I think it's important to note that we are limited by our attendance, and we can try and make allowances to try and include those things in there.
Yeah, I agree, Becky, and also that's a good point, because even just as supposedly representing the community, I mean, it's not just all the social groups. It's how do we represent the community and the wider community, everybody, whatever their ethnic ethnicity. So yeah, that's, I think, good point.
I suggest that rather than putting in a conflict of interest, that we develop an inclusion statement, which actually needs a bit of thought rather than sort of doing it on the fly.
Yeah, I think so too. So I think what we'll do is press, oh, hold on. I wonder if we could approve what we have pending an email decision on a new section about inclusiveness. Would that sit right with you, Peter?
Good by me.
Okay, so let's do that then. Unless anybody else has concerns about the process, please clap if you have a concern about the process. Okay. JP, is that a concern?
Yeah, just that if we, you know, rather than approving part of the document, if we are going to add to it, maybe we'll get more people reading it if there's a little bit more time. So, I mean, is there a good reason to approve part of the document before we add that in?
I guess that depends if we consider an email decision really robust. Because usually a discussion like this produces more of a robust decision.
But we're going to
because
have
it's
to
had
still
the
decide on
discussion than an
the
email decision, whereas the email decision would just be a little piece of it. Peter, I'm stuck.
I don't think it actually matters which way you go. You know, just say, you know, improve. We agree with it in principle, but we'd also like to see it as an inclusion statement added before it's finally approved by way of an email email decision.
Okay. JP, would you have any strong concerns about going that way?
No, I guess, I mean, if there were strong concerns against it anyway, that'll come out in the emails and then
Yeah, of
discussion.
course.
So,
yeah.
you know, if there was somebody who was really upset by part of it, then I guess that would get.
Then we can revisit it, I'm sure. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so let's do that then. Pending the inclusion of an inclusivity paragraph, can we do a thumbs up in support of these operating procedures and a clap if there are outstanding concerns apart from that inclusivity piece? Awesome. Lots of thumbs up. All right, let's call that a decision pending that final piece then. Thank you, everybody. And with 3 minutes to go, golly, I would like to share my screen with you one final time. Can I though? Where's it gone? There it is. So this here is the skeleton of a submission to the Climate Change Commission. And you can see in here that I have asked each of our existing groups to add to relevant questions their thoughts on what we should be saying about the advice that the Climate Change Commission gave the government or drafted for the government and are seeking our thoughts on. So there's going to be a period of time in which all of the groups can contribute underneath these headings in whatever way they feel. And at the end of that, a small group of people will go through and collate it and proofread it and make sure that nothing is inconsistent with our now approved documentation and our purpose and so on, and our charter. And we'll then send it out to the whole forum for their input. So every member of the forum will have the opportunity to contribute either through their group or as individuals. And at the end of that period, we will then seek an email consensus on it as a whole forum. There's a very short time frame to turn that process around. So you can expect an email about this in the next couple of days. And I'll make sure that the timeline is right, which it wasn't quite in the email I sent to the subgroups earlier on this week. So final questions, comments on that before we close off. Rachel?
Thanks, Julie. I'm just wondering, would you, if you or this group, but maybe you, seeing you set the document up, would have any objections to me just kind of sharing that document again with the urban development group and just suggesting that people put their own thoughts in or comments into just straight into the document, but maybe put their name beside it. So if there's any questions or so that people can see where it comes from. So somebody could write a comment and then, you know, say Peter Orenshaw Urban Development or something, just so that it, I don't know if you, or are you really wanting us to have another meeting in the next week as a subgroup to try to come up with things?
I am happy for each group to tackle it however they would like to.
Okay, great.
So use whatever
I'll put
suits
that out
your
to
group.
them. Yeah, no, I'll put that out to the group then. Thanks.
But what I would ask of the subgroup coordinators is to coordinate that process, and so that what you end up with is something that the proofreading team can easily work with. Awesome. I know that other groups, some groups already have a shared document within their group that they're working on, and that they're going to eventually incorporate that into this shared document. So yes, however you want to engage with the process is up to you. Okay, if you have any other questions about it, flick me an email, please, because we are 2 minutes over time and I'm ready for bed. Would anyone like to close this off with a karakia? Okay, I
can.
Yes, please, Jo. Thank you.
This is Tiakina taking care of the world. Kia hiwa rā e ngā teina o te tai ao, a rangi nui rawa ko papa tuanuku. Tiakina te whare nui a tāne. Ki te kore au, ka kore he whare ora. Tiakina te wai a tangaroa. Ki te kore koe, ka kore he wai ora. Tiakina te hau a tā whirimatea. Ki te kore ia, ka kore he hau ora. Tiakina, tiakina, ti he Māori ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. I'll see
Keep
you.
well, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you for, yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Thanks, everyone.
See you all. Thanks, Julie.